Marcus Rothwell III sat in the back row of his economics class, staring at the test paper in front of him. The words seemed to dance and blur together on the white page. He rubbed his eyes and tried to focus again, but nothing made sense. Around him, other students were writing quickly, their pens moving across their papers with confidence. Marcus felt his stomach twist into knots. The clock on the wall showed 30 minutes left. Marcus had barely answered 3 questions out of 20. He knew he was going to fail again. This would be his 4th failed test this month, and it was only October. His hands started to shake as he thought about what his father would say. Marcus came from one of the richest families in America. His father, Marcus Rothwell Jr., owned a technology company worth billions of dollars. Their family had more money than most people could imagine. They lived in a mansion with 27 rooms, had 5 cars, and owned houses in 3 different countries. Marcus had grown up with everything a child could want, but there was one thing money could not buy: good grades. Ever since he was young, Marcus had trouble in school. Reading was hard for him. Math problems looked like puzzles he could never solve. When he tried to write essays, the words would not come out right. His teachers always said he was not trying hard enough. His father hired the best tutors money could buy, but nothing seemed to help. Now Marcus was 19 years old and in his 2nd year at Westfield University, one of the most expensive and respected schools in the country. His father had donated millions of dollars to get Marcus accepted. The university had a beautiful campus with old brick buildings covered in ivy. The classrooms had the newest technology, and the library had over 2 million books. Marcus should have been happy to study at such a famous place. Instead, he felt trapped. Every day was a struggle. He would sit in lectures and listen to professors talk, but the information never stayed in his brain. When he tried to take notes, he could not write fast enough. When he tried to read his textbooks, the letters seemed to jump around on the page. His roommate, David, was different. David came from a middle-class family and had worked hard to get a scholarship to Westfield. David studied for hours every day and got perfect grades. He could not understand why Marcus was having so much trouble. "Just read the chapter 3 times," David would say. "Make flashcards, highlight the important parts. It is not that hard." But for Marcus, it was that hard. He had tried everything David suggested and more. He had hired tutors who charged $500 an hour. He had bought every study guide and practice test available. He had even paid other students to help him understand the material. Nothing worked. The worst part was that Marcus was not stupid. When people explained things to him out loud, he understood perfectly. He could have long conversations about history, politics, and business. He had great ideas and could solve problems when he talked them through with someone. But when it came to tests and written work, his mind went blank. His father did not understand this. Marcus Rothwell Jr. had been an excellent student. He had graduated at the top of his class from Harvard Business School. He expected his son to do the same. Every week he would call Marcus and ask about his grades. "How did your test go?" his father would ask. Marcus would have to tell him about another failure. His father's voice would get cold and angry. "I am paying $60,000 a year for your education," his father would say. "I donated $2 million to build their new library. The least you can do is pass your classes." Marcus felt the pressure every day. He knew that someday he was supposed to take over his father's company. He was supposed to be smart and successful like his father, but he felt like he was letting everyone down. The other students at Westfield did not make things easier. Many of them came from rich families too, but they were also smart and got good grades. They would talk about their test scores and their plans to go to graduate school. Marcus would sit quietly and say nothing, hoping no one would ask him about his grades. Some students knew who his father was. They would make jokes about Marcus buying his way into the university. They called him names behind his back. The dumb rich kid and daddy's failure. Marcus pretended not to hear them, but the words hurt. As Marcus sat in the economics classroom, watching the minutes tick by, he felt hopeless. He looked down at his test paper again. Question 15 asked about supply and demand curves. Marcus knew he had studied this topic. His tutor had explained it to him just yesterday. But now, Under pressure, with a time limit, his mind was completely empty. He filled in random answers for the last 10 questions, just to have something on the paper. When the professor called time, Marcus handed in his test knowing he had failed, again. As he walked out of the classroom, he heard other students talking about how easy the test had been. That evening, Marcus sat alone in his dorm room. His phone rang. It was his father. "How did your economics test go today?" His father asked, as he always did. Marcus closed his eyes. "I think I did okay," he lied. "Good. Your grades need to improve, Marcus. I got a call from the dean last week. He is concerned about your performance. This cannot continue." After his father hung up, Marcus lay on his bed and stared at the ceiling. He thought about all the money his family had, all the opportunities he had been given, and how he was wasting it all. He thought about his father's company and how he was supposed to run it someday. How could he run a billion-dollar business if he could not even pass a simple college test? Marcus had everything money could buy: expensive clothes, a luxury car, a credit card with no limit. But he did not have the one thing that mattered most to his father and to his future: the ability to succeed in school. As he fell asleep that night, Marcus wondered if he would ever be able to make his father proud, or if he was doomed to be a disappointment forever. 2 weeks later, Marcus sat in his business ethics class waiting for Professor Williams to hand back their test papers. His stomach felt sick as he watched the professor walk around the room, placing papers face down on each desk. Marcus knew what was coming, but he still hoped for a miracle. Professor Williams was a tall, serious man who had taught at Westfield University for 20 years. He was known for being fair, but tough. His tests were hard, but most students could pass them if they studied. Most students, but not Marcus. When Professor Williams reached Marcus's desk, he paused for a moment. He placed the paper down and gave Marcus a look that was part disappointment and part concern. Marcus did not turn the paper over right away. He could see the red ink bleeding through from the other side. Finally, Marcus flipped the paper. At TU, the top, written in thick red marker, was a large F with 38% written next to it. Below that, Professor Williams had written a note. "See me after class. We need to talk about your future in this course." Marcus felt his face turn red with shame. He quickly turned the paper back over and slumped down in his chair. Around him, other students were looking at their grades. Some smiled, others looked worried, but none looked as devastated as Marcus felt. "As you can see," Professor Williams said to the class, "some of you did very well on this test, and others need to work harder. The average score was 78%. If you scored below 60%, you are in danger of failing this course." Marcus knew he was one of only 3 students who had scored below 60%. The other 2 were international students who struggled with English. Marcus had no excuse except his own inability to understand the material. After class, Marcus walked slowly to Professor Williams's desk. The other students filed out of the room, talking and laughing. Marcus wished he could disappear. "Sit down, Marcus," Professor Williams said, pulling out a chair. "We need to have a serious conversation." Marcus sat down and stared at his hands. He could not look the professor in the eye. "This is your 3rd failing test in my class, Professor," Williams continued. "Your essay assignments have also been below average. I have to ask, are you even trying?" "Yes, sir," Marcus said quietly. "I study every night. I hired a tutor. I read all the chapters." Professor Williams looked surprised. "You have a tutor?" "Yes, sir. Dr. Peterson. He charges $500 an hour." $500 an hour? Professor Williams shook his head. "Marcus, if you are really studying that hard and still failing, maybe you need to think about whether this is the right major for you. Business might not be your strength." Those words hit Marcus like a punch to the stomach. Business was supposed to be his future. His father expected him to study business and then join the family company. If he could not succeed in business classes, what would he do? "I have to pass this class," Marcus said, his voice shaking. "My father is expecting me to get good grades." Professor Williams sighed. "I understand family pressure, but you cannot pass my class just because your father wants you to." You have to earn it. Right now, your grade average is 42%. To pass the class, you need at least 60%. That means you need to score very high on the remaining tests and your final project. Marcus felt tears starting to form in his eyes. He blinked them back, not wanting to cry in front of his professor. "I will give you one more chance," Professor Williams said. "But if you fail the next test, I will have to recommend that you drop the class. It would be better to drop now and try again next semester than to fail and have it hurt your overall grade average." Marcus nodded and left the classroom feeling defeated. As he walked across campus, he saw groups of students studying together on the grass. They looked happy and confident. Marcus felt like he was from a different world. He went back to his dorm room and called his tutor, Dr. Peterson. Dr. Peterson was a retired business professor who had agreed to help Marcus for an enormous amount of money. "I failed another test," Marcus told him. "Professor Williams says I might need to drop the class." "Nonsense," Dr. Peterson said. "You just need to work harder. We will have longer sessions. Instead of 2 hours, we will study for 4 hours each time. I will make you practice problems until you get them right." But Marcus had already been studying with Dr. Peterson for months and it was not working. Longer sessions would just mean more frustration and more failure. That evening, Marcus's phone rang. He saw his father's name on the screen and felt sick. He thought about not answering, but that would only make things worse. "Hello, Dad." "Marcus, I just got an email from Dean Richardson. He says you are failing business ethics. Is this true?" Marcus closed his eyes. The dean had promised to update his father on his progress. Marcus had hoped for more time before his father found out about this latest failure. "I had a bad test," Marcus said, "but I can bring my grade up." "A bad test?" His father's voice was getting louder. "According to the dean, you have failed 3 tests in a row." "3 tests, Marcus. What exactly are you doing with your time up there?" "I am studying. Dad, I study every day. I have a tutor." "Then why are you failing? Other students pass these classes. What makes you so special that you cannot do what everyone else does?" Marcus did not know how to answer that question. He had asked himself the same thing 1,000 times. "I am trying my best," Marcus said weakly. "Your best is not good enough," his father shouted. "Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is for me? I donated millions of dollars to that university. The board of directors knows who you are. They expect my son to be successful, not a failure." Marcus felt tears running down his face now. "I am sorry, Dad." "Sorry is not enough. I am giving you one last chance, Marcus. You have until the end of this semester to get your grades up. If you do not pass all your classes, you are done. No more money, no more university, no more chances. You will have to find your own way in the world." The phone went silent. Marcus's father had hung up. Marcus sat on his bed and cried. He thought about his father's words. No more money meant no more university, no more nice clothes, no more expensive car. But worse than that, it meant he would be cut off from his family. His father would disown him. Marcus had grown up believing he would someday run his father's company. It was his birthright, his destiny. But now he realized he might lose everything, all because he could not pass simple college tests. Later that night, Marcus walked around campus trying to clear his head. The university was beautiful at night, with old-fashioned street lamps lighting the paths between buildings. Most students were in their rooms studying or socializing. Marcus felt completely alone. He ended up at the library, a massive building with tall windows and stone columns. Even though it was late, the library was still open. Marcus went inside, thinking maybe he could try to study again. Maybe if he just worked harder, pushed himself more, he could figure out how to pass his classes. But as he sat at a table surrounded by thick textbooks, Marcus felt hopeless. He had tried everything he could think of. He had the best tutors, the most expensive study materials, and all the time in the world. Nothing worked. Marcus put his head down on the table and wondered if he was destined to be a failure forever. It was almost midnight when Marcus found himself alone in the university library. Most students had gone back to their dorms hours ago. But Marcus could not sleep. He had spread his business ethics textbook, notebooks, and papers across a large table on the third floor. The building was quiet except for the soft humming of the heating system and the occasional footstep in the hallway. Marcus had been sitting at the same table for 3 hours, trying to understand a chapter about business law. The words seemed to swim on the page. He would read a paragraph 3 times and still not understand what it meant. His head hurt, and his eyes felt tired and dry. He picked up a yellow highlighter and tried to mark the important parts, but everything seemed important. The whole page was covered in yellow marks now, which made it even harder to read. Marcus threw the highlighter down in frustration and put his head in his hands. "This is impossible," he whispered to himself. "I am never going to understand this." The sound of wheels rolling across the floor made Marcus look up. An older black man was pushing a cleaning cart down the hallway between the bookshelves. The man was wearing a dark blue uniform with Westfield University Custodial Services written on the shirt. His hair was gray and he moved slowly but steadily, emptying trash cans and wiping down tables. Marcus had seen janitors around campus before, but he had never really paid attention to them. They were just part of the background, like the buildings and the trees. But tonight, with the library so quiet and empty, Marcus noticed this man more clearly. The janitor worked his way toward Marcus's area, cleaning each table carefully. When he got close to Marcus's table, he stopped and looked at the mess of books and papers spread everywhere. "You are here pretty late," the janitor said in a kind voice. "Most students have gone home by now." Marcus looked up, surprised that the man had spoken to him. "I am trying to study," he said. "I have a test coming up." The janitor nodded and continued cleaning the table next to Marcus's. "Must be an important test to keep you here so late." "They are all important," Marcus said sadly. "And I am failing all of them." The janitor stopped cleaning and looked at Marcus more carefully. He was an older man, maybe in his 60s, with gentle brown eyes and deep lines around his face that showed he smiled often. There was something calm and peaceful about him that made Marcus feel less alone. "I am Samuel," the janitor said, extending his hand. "Samuel Washington. I have been working here at Westfield for 30 years. Marcus shook his hand. "I am Marcus Rothwell." "Nice to meet you, Marcus," Samuel said. "You look pretty upset. Want to talk about what is bothering you?" Marcus was surprised by the question. No one ever asked him how he was feeling. Not his professors, not his classmates, not even his roommate. They only asked about his grades or what his father did for work. "I do not think you would understand," Marcus said. "My problems are pretty complicated." Samuel smiled and sat down in the chair across from Marcus. "Try me. I have heard a lot of stories over the years. Students have told me about all kinds of troubles." Marcus looked at this janitor, this man he had never met before, and felt something strange. Samuel seemed genuinely interested in helping. His eyes were kind, and he was not in a hurry to move on to the next table. "I am failing all my classes," Marcus said slowly. "No matter how hard I study, I cannot pass my tests. My father is going to disown me if I do not get my grades up by the end of the semester." "That sounds like a lot of pressure," Samuel said. "Tell me about how you study. What do you do to prepare for tests?" Marcus described his routine: the expensive tutors, the long hours in the library, the highlighting and note-taking, the practice, tests. Samuel listened carefully, nodding occasionally but not interrupting. "I have tried everything," Marcus finished. "I spend more time studying than anyone I know. I have the best tutors money can buy. But nothing works. I think I might just be stupid." Samuel shook his head firmly. "You are not stupid, son. I can tell that just from talking to you for 5 minutes. You speak clearly, you understand complex ideas, and you can explain your problems very well. That does not sound like a stupid person to me." Marcus felt a small spark of hope. "But if I am not stupid, why can I not pass my tests?" "That is a good question," Samuel said. "In 30 years of working here, I have seen thousands of students. I have watched them study in this library, listened to them talk about their classes, and seen them celebrate their successes and cry over their failures. I have learned to notice patterns. Samuel paused and looked at Marcus's textbook and notes spread across the table. Can you read me a paragraph from your textbook? Samuel asked. Marcus looked confused but picked up his business ethics book. He found a paragraph about corporate responsibility and started to read out loud. As he read, Samuel watched him carefully. Marcus struggled with several words, had to go back and reread sentences and seemed to lose track of what the paragraph was about halfway through. When he finished, Samuel asked him what the paragraph had said. Something about companies being responsible to their stakeholders, Marcus said uncertainly. But I am not really sure what it meant. Samuel nodded thoughtfully. Now close the book and tell me what you think corporate responsibility means, just in your own words. Marcus thought for a moment. Well, I think it means that companies should not just care about making money. They should also think about how their decisions affect their employees, their customers, and the community. Like, if a company pollutes the environment to save money, that is not being responsible because it hurts everyone else. Samuel smiled. That is exactly right. You understand the concept perfectly when you think about it in your own way, but when you read it from the textbook, it gets confusing. I do not understand the difference, Marcus said. The difference is important, Samuel said. When you explain things in your own words, you are very clear and intelligent. But when you try to read from the textbook, you struggle. That tells me something specific about how your brain works. Samuel leaned forward in his chair. I have a grandson named James. He is about your age, and for years his teachers thought he was lazy or not very smart. He would study for hours, but still fail his tests. His parents spent thousands of dollars on tutors and special programs, but nothing helped. What happened to him? Marcus asked. One day, a teacher noticed the same thing I just noticed about you. James could understand and explain complex ideas when they were presented to him in certain ways, but he struggled with traditional reading and writing. That teacher suggested that James might have something called dyslexia. Marcus had heard the word before but did not know much about it. What is dyslexia? It is a learning difference, Samuel explained. People with dyslexia are often very intelligent, but their brains process written information differently than most people. Reading can be difficult, words might seem to move around on the page, and traditional study methods often do not work. Well, Marcus felt his heart beating faster. Do you think I might have dyslexia? I am not a doctor, Samuel said carefully, but I have spent a lot of time watching students, and you remind me very much of my grandson before he got help. The way you struggle with reading but can understand things when they are explained out loud, the way you get frustrated with traditional study methods, it all seems familiar. Samuel continued cleaning while he talked, but he kept looking at Marcus with concern and kindness. What happened to your grandson after he found out about the dyslexia? Marcus asked. Everything changed, Samuel said. Once James understood how his brain worked, he could use study methods that actually helped him. He learned to use audiobooks instead of trying to read everything. He found ways to take notes that made sense to him. He discovered that he learned better when he could discuss ideas with other people, instead of just reading about them silently. Did his grades improve? Not just his grades. His whole life improved. He stopped thinking he was stupid. He gained confidence. He graduated from college and now he works as an engineer. He is very successful. Marcus felt tears in his eyes, but this time, they were not tears of sadness. For the first time in his life, someone had given him a possible explanation for his struggles that did not involve him being lazy or stupid. How can I find out if I have dyslexia? Marcus asked. The university has a learning disabilities center, Samuel said. They can test you and help you understand how you learn best. But even before you get officially tested, there are things you can try that might help. Like what? Samuel smiled. Well, I have learned a few tricks from watching my grandson and other students over the years. Would you like me to show you some things that might make studying easier? Marcus nodded eagerly. For the first time in weeks, he felt hopeful. First, Samuel said, close that textbook. We are going to try a different approach. Samuel pulled a chair closer to Marcus's table and sat down. He looked at the pile of textbooks and highlighted papers with a knowing expression. "Before we try anything new," Samuel said, "I want to tell you more about what I have observed over the years. You see, Marcus, I do not just clean this library. I watch, I listen, I learn." Marcus was confused. "What do you mean?" "In 30 years of working here, I have seen thousands of students come and go. I have watched them study, seen them struggle, and celebrated their successes. After a while, you start to notice patterns, things that teachers and professors might miss because they are focused on curriculum and grades." Samuel pointed to Marcus's textbook. "I have seen many students like you, students who are clearly intelligent when you talk to them, but who struggle with reading and writing. Students who can solve complex problems when they discuss them out loud, but who freeze up during written tests." "How many students like me have you seen?" Marcus asked. "More than you might think," Samuel replied. "Maybe 1 or 2 every semester. They usually sit right here on the 3rd floor late at night, surrounded by books and looking frustrated. They highlight everything because they cannot figure out what is important. They reread the same paragraphs over and over. They look exhausted and defeated." Marcus felt a chill. Samuel was describing exactly how he felt. "What I have noticed," Samuel continued, "is that these students all share certain characteristics. They are often very creative and good at solving problems. They can understand complex concepts when someone explains them out loud. They are usually good at sports or art or music, but traditional academic work, reading textbooks, taking notes from lectures, writing essays, taking multiple choice tests, all of that is incredibly difficult for them." "That sounds exactly like me," Marcus said quietly. "I know it does," Samuel said with a gentle smile. "And here is the important part. It is not because you are not smart enough. It is because your brain works differently. Your brain might be wired in a way that makes you excellent at some things but challenged by others." Samuel leaned back in his chair. "Let me ask you some questions. When you were young, did you have trouble learning to read?" Marcus nodded. "Reading was always hard for me. Other kids in my class could read chapter books while I was still struggling with simple sentences." "Did you ever reverse letters or numbers when you were writing? Like writing a B when you meant to write a D?" "All the time," Marcus said. "My teachers thought I was not paying attention." "When you read out loud, do you sometimes skip words or read words that are not actually on the page?" Marcus felt his heart racing. "Yes." "How did you know that? Do you find it easier to remember things that you hear rather than things that you read?" "Definitely. When my professors lecture, I can remember what they say pretty well, but when I try to read the same information from the textbook, it just does not stick." Samuel nodded. "One more question. When you look at a page of text, do the words ever seem to move around or blur together?" Marcus stared at Samuel in amazement. "Sometimes it feels like the letters are jumping around on the page. I thought everyone experienced that." "No, son," Samuel said softly. "Not everyone experiences that. What you are describing are classic signs of dyslexia." "But I have had tutors my whole life," Marcus said. "Expensive tutors. If I had dyslexia, would not they have noticed?" Samuel shook his head. "Not necessarily. Many tutors, even expensive ones, are trained to use traditional teaching methods. They might try to help you read faster or take better notes, but they do not necessarily know how to recognize learning differences. They might just think you need to work harder or practice more. So all these years when I thought I was stupid, you were not stupid," Samuel said firmly. "You were just trying to learn in ways that did not match how your brain works. It is like trying to play basketball with a football. You can try as hard as you want, but you are using the wrong equipment for the game." Marcus felt a mixture of relief and frustration. "If you are right about this, why did no one else figure it out? I have been in school for 13 years. Unfortunately," Samuel said, "many people still do not understand dyslexia very well. Some teachers think it just means you read slowly. Some people think it only affects children. And some people, especially those who have never experienced it themselves, think it is just an excuse for being lazy. Samuel stood up and walked over to a bookshelf. He pulled out a thin book and brought it back to the table. "This is a book about learning differences that I checked out from the library," he said. "I started reading about dyslexia after my grandson was diagnosed. I wanted to understand what he was going through." Samuel opened the book to a page he had marked with a bookmark. "Listen to this description. People with dyslexia often have average or above average intelligence, but they process written language differently. They might struggle with reading fluency, spelling, and writing, but they often excel in areas like problem solving, creativity, and verbal communication." Marcus felt tears coming to his eyes again. "That sounds like me." "It sounds like you because it probably is you," Samuel said. "But here is the most important part. Dyslexia is not a disease or a disability that limits what you can achieve. It is just a different way of thinking and learning. Once you understand how your brain works, you can find strategies that help you succeed." "What kind of strategies?" Samuel smiled. "Well, my grandson taught me quite a few tricks over the years. For example, instead of trying to read textbooks the traditional way, he listens to audiobooks. Many textbooks are available as audio files." "Now, audiobooks?" Marcus had never thought of that. "Yes. When he listens to information instead of reading it, he can understand and remember it much better. He also uses computer programs that can read text out loud to him." Samuel pulled out his phone and showed Marcus an app. "This program can take a picture of a page in your textbook and read it to you out loud. My grandson used it all through college." Marcus was amazed. "I never knew things like this existed." "There are many tools available now," Samuel said. "There are also techniques for taking notes that work better for people with dyslexia. Instead of trying to write down everything the professor says, you can focus on drawing diagrams or using colors to organize information." "Colors?" "Yes. Some people with dyslexia find that using different colored pens or highlighters helps them organize information. Others find that reading text on colored paper is easier than reading on white paper." Samuel reached into his cleaning cart and pulled out some colored plastic sheets. "These are reading overlays. Some students find that placing these over a page of text makes the words easier to read and reduces eye strain." Marcus took one of the overlays and placed it over a page in his textbook. The words did seem clearer and more stable. "This is incredible," Marcus said. "Why does no one talk about these things?" "Because most people do not need them," Samuel explained. "For people who do not have dyslexia, these tools might seem unnecessary or strange. But for people whose brains work like yours, they can make all the difference in the world." Samuel sat back down and looked at Marcus seriously. "I want you to understand something important. If you do have dyslexia, it does not mean you are broken or that you need to be fixed. It just means you need to find the right tools and strategies for your type of brain." "But what about my father?" Marcus asked. "What about his expectations?" "That is a separate issue," Samuel said gently. "Your father loves you and wants you to succeed, but he might not understand how you learn best. Once you start using strategies that work for your brain, your grades will improve. When your father sees that improvement, he will understand that you have been trying hard all along." Marcus felt hope growing in his chest for the first time in months. "Do you really think this could work?" "I know it can work," Samuel said confidently. "I have seen it work with my grandson and with other students. But you have to be willing to try new approaches and stop thinking of yourself as a failure." "How do I start?" Samuel smiled. "We start tonight. Right here, right now. We are going to try studying for your business ethics test using methods that work for your type of brain instead of fighting against it." Marcus looked at his pile of books and papers with new eyes. Maybe, just maybe, there was hope after all. Samuel cleared away Marcus's highlighted textbooks and spread notebooks. "We are going to start fresh," he said. "Forget everything you think you know about studying. Tonight, we are going to try something completely different." Marcus watched as Samuel arranged the colored overlays, some blank paper, and a few colored pens on the table. It looked nothing like the study setup Marcus was used to. "First," Samuel said, Tell me what topic you need to study for your next test. Business ethics and corporate social responsibility, Marcus replied. Professor Williams is testing us on 3 chapters next week. Perfect. Now, instead of opening the textbook, I want you to tell me what you already know about business ethics. Just talk to me like we are having a conversation. Marcus thought for a moment. Well, I think business ethics is about companies doing the right thing, not just making money. Like they should treat their workers fairly and not pollute the environment. Good, Samuel said, writing Marcus's words on a piece of paper in large, clear letters. What else? Companies should be honest with their customers. They should not lie about their products or charge unfair prices just because they can. Samuel continued writing, using different colored pens for different ideas. You are doing great. Keep going. For the next 10 minutes, Marcus talked about business ethics while Samuel took notes. Marcus was surprised at how much he actually knew about the topic when he could just speak freely instead of trying to read from a textbook. Look at this, Samuel said, showing Marcus the colorful notes he had written. You understand the basic concepts very well. The problem is not that you do not know the material. The problem is that traditional textbooks present information in a way that is hard for your brain to process. Samuel picked up Marcus's textbook and opened it to the chapter on corporate social responsibility. The page was dense with small text, long paragraphs, and complicated sentences. This is how most textbooks present information, Samuel said. Long paragraphs, big words, lots of details all mixed together. For someone with dyslexia, this can be overwhelming. Samuel took out his phone and opened the app he had shown Marcus earlier. He took a picture of a paragraph from the textbook, and the app began reading the text out loud in a clear computer voice. Listen to this, Samuel said. Just listen. Do not try to read along. Marcus closed his eyes and listened as the app read a paragraph about stakeholder theory. When it was finished, Samuel asked, "What did you understand from that?" It was talking about how companies need to think about all the people affected by their decisions, not just the shareholders who own stock, Marcus said, like employees, customers, and the community. Exactly right, Samuel said. You understood it perfectly when you heard it. Now try reading the same paragraph with your eyes. Marcus looked down at the textbook and tried to read the paragraph. The words seemed to swim on the page, and by the time he reached the end, he could barely remember what the beginning had said. It is much harder when I try to read it, Marcus admitted. That is because your brain processes auditory information much better than visual text information, Samuel explained. This is very common with dyslexia. Your ears are your superpower when it comes to learning. Samuel showed Marcus how to use the app to take pictures of textbook pages and have them read aloud. You can listen while you follow along with your finger, or you can close your eyes and just focus on hearing the information. They spent the next hour going through the textbook chapters this way. Samuel would have the app read a section aloud. Then he and Marcus would discuss what it meant. Marcus found that he could understand and remember the information much better this way. Now let's try a different technique, Samuel said. He took out a large sheet of paper and drew a circle in the center. Inside the circle, he wrote, Corporate Social Responsibility. This is called a mind map, Samuel explained. Instead of taking notes in a linear way, we are going to organize information visually. Samuel drew lines coming out from the center, circle, and wrote different topics at the end of each line. Environmental responsibility, employee relations, customer rights, community impact. Your turn, Samuel said, handing Marcus a colored pen. Add details to each of these branches. Marcus began adding information to the mind map. Under environmental responsibility, he wrote things like reducing pollution and using renewable energy. Under employee relations, he added fair wages and safe working conditions. As Marcus worked on the mind map, he realized something amazing was happening. The information was making sense to him. He could see how different concepts connected to each other. The visual layout helped him understand the relationships between ideas in a way that linear note-taking never had. This is incredible, Marcus said. I can actually see how everything fits together. Visual learners often find mind maps very helpful, Samuel said. Your brain likes to see patterns and connections. Traditional note-taking forces you to put information in a straight line. But mind maps let you show how ideas relate to each other. Samuel taught Marcus several other techniques that night. He showed him how to use different colors to highlight different types of information: green for definitions, blue for examples, red for important facts. He taught him how to break large chunks of text into smaller, more manageable pieces. Here is another trick my grandson uses, Samuel said. He took a piece of cardboard and cut a rectangular window in it. When you are reading, place this over the page so you can only see a few lines at a time. It helps reduce visual overload. Marcus tried the reading window and found that it did help him focus on smaller sections of text without getting overwhelmed. As the night went on, Marcus felt like a whole new world of learning was opening up to him. For the first time in his life, studying did not feel like torture. It felt like solving puzzles and making connections. Why does no one teach these methods in school? Marcus asked. Because most students do not need them, Samuel replied. Traditional teaching methods work fine for about 80% of students. But for the other 20%, students with dyslexia, ADHD, or other learning differences, these alternative methods can be life-changing. Samuel looked at his watch. It was almost 3 in the morning. We should probably wrap up soon, but I want to show you one more thing. He pulled out his phone again and opened a different app. This is a text-to-speech app that can read any digital text out loud. If your professors post their lecture notes online, or if you have digital copies of your textbooks, you can have this app read them to you while you drive, exercise, or even while you are falling asleep. You mean I can study while I am doing other things? Absolutely. My grandson used to listen to his textbooks while he went for walks. He said the physical movement actually helped him concentrate and remember information better. Marcus felt like his entire understanding of learning was being turned upside down, in the best possible way. Samuel, Marcus said, I cannot believe no one ever told me about these things before. I have spent years thinking I was stupid, when really I just needed different tools. You are not the first student to feel that way, Samuel said gently. The important thing is that you know now. From this point forward, you can approach learning in ways that work with your brain instead of against it. But what about my expensive tutor? What about all the money my father has spent on traditional help? Dr. Peterson might be a good tutor, but if he is only using traditional methods, he is not the right tutor for you, Samuel said. You need someone who understands dyslexia and can teach you using strategies that match how your brain works. Samuel began packing up his cleaning supplies. I want you to try these techniques for the next week. Use the apps, make mind maps, listen to your textbooks instead of just reading them. See if it makes a difference. What if it does not work? Marcus asked, though he was feeling more hopeful than he had in months. It will work, Samuel said confidently. Maybe not perfectly at first, and maybe not for every subject, but it will work better than what you have been doing. The key is to be patient with yourself and remember that your brain is not broken. It just works differently. As Samuel pushed his cleaning cart toward the elevator, he turned back to Marcus. One more thing. You should consider getting officially tested for dyslexia. The University Learning Center can help you with that. If you are officially diagnosed, you can get accommodations for your tests, things like extra time or being able to take tests in a quiet room. Extra time? Marcus had never heard of such a thing. Students with learning differences often qualify for extended time on tests, or they can take tests on a computer instead of on paper. These accommodations level the playing field, so you can show what you actually know instead of being limited by how fast you can read or write. Marcus felt a surge of hope and excitement. For the first time in his life, he had an explanation for his struggles that did not make him feel stupid or lazy. More importantly, he had practical tools that might actually help him succeed. Samuel, Marcus called out as the janitor reached the elevator. Thank you. You have no idea how much this means to me. Samuel smiled. Just promise me you will give these techniques a real try. And remember, you are much smarter than you think you are. The next morning, Marcus woke up feeling different. For the first time in months, he had not gone to bed feeling like a failure. Instead, he felt curious and hopeful about trying the new study methods Samuel had shown him. Marcus went to his morning classes with a completely new perspective. In his economics lecture, instead of trying to frantically write down every word the professor said, he focused on listening and understanding the main ideas. He used different colored pens to organize his notes the way Samuel had taught him. Blue for main concepts, green for examples, red for important formulas. After class, Marcus went straight to the university bookstore and bought a digital voice recorder. He also downloaded the text-to-speech app Samuel had recommended onto his phone and laptop. That afternoon, he went to the Learning Disabilities Center to ask about getting tested for dyslexia. The woman at the front desk, Mrs. Chen, was very kind and understanding. "We see many students who suspect they might have learning differences," she said. "Testing can take a few weeks to schedule, but in the meantime, I can give you some information about accommodations and study strategies." Mrs. Chen gave Marcus several pamphlets about dyslexia and learning disabilities. She also told him about study groups specifically designed for students with different learning styles. "There is a group that meets every Tuesday and Thursday evening," she explained. "It is led by a graduate student who has dyslexia herself. She teaches strategies similar to what you have described." Marcus signed up for the study group immediately. He felt relieved to know there were other students dealing with similar challenges. That evening, Marcus decided to test Samuel's methods on his business ethics homework. He had a 5-page essay due the following week about corporate responsibility. In the pharmaceutical industry, instead of starting with research in traditional textbooks, Marcus used the text-to-speech app to listen to several articles about the topic. He closed his eyes and just focused on absorbing the information through his ears. As he listened, he took notes using the mind-mapping technique Samuel had shown him. The difference was remarkable. Marcus found that he could understand complex arguments and remember specific examples much more easily when he heard them, rather than read them. He created a large mind map, with pharmaceutical ethics in the center and branches extending out to cover topics like drug pricing, clinical trials, marketing practices, and access to medicines in developing countries. After listening to information, for about 2 hours, Marcus had filled 3 large sheets of paper with colorful, organized notes. More importantly, he felt like he actually understood the material instead of just trying to memorize facts. The next day, Marcus attended his first meeting of the Alternative Learning Study Group. There were 8 other students in the group, and they met in a comfortable room with beanbag chairs, whiteboards, and good lighting. The group leader was Sarah, a graduate student in psychology who had been diagnosed with dyslexia when she was in high school. She was warm and encouraging, and she immediately made Marcus feel welcomed. "The most important thing to remember," Sarah told the group, "is that having a learning difference does not make you less intelligent. It just means you need to find the right strategies for your particular brain." During the 2-hour session, Sarah taught the group several techniques that expanded on what Samuel had shown Marcus. She demonstrated how to use graphic organizers to plan essays, how to create acronyms and memory devices for remembering information, and how to break large assignments into smaller, manageable tasks. For students with dyslexia, Sarah explained, it is often helpful to approach writing assignments differently. Instead of trying to write a perfect first draft, try talking through your ideas first. You can record yourself explaining your main points, then listen back and use that as the basis for your written work. Marcus tried this technique when he got back to his dorm room. He used his new voice recorder to talk through his ideas for the pharmaceutical ethics essay. Speaking out loud, he was able to organize his thoughts clearly and develop sophisticated arguments about drug pricing and corporate responsibility. When he played back the recording, Marcus was amazed at how articulate and intelligent he sounded. The ideas that seemed jumbled and confused in his head became clear and logical when he spoke them out loud. Over the next week, Marcus continued experimenting with the new learning strategies. He listened to his textbooks using the text-to-speech software while he walked around campus. He discovered that the physical movement actually helped him concentrate and retain information better, just as Samuel had predicted. Marcus also started using colored overlays when he had to read printed materials. The overlays reduced the eye strain and made text easier to focus on. He began carrying them with him to all his classes. In his economics class, Marcus asked his professor if he could record the lectures. Professor Martinez was happy to accommodate the request and even offered to share his lecture notes in digital format, so Marcus could have them read aloud. "I am glad you are taking initiative to find study methods that work for you," Professor Martinez said. "Too many students struggle in silence instead of asking for help." Marcus's roommate David noticed the changes immediately. "You seem different lately," David said one evening, "more focused and less stressed." "I am learning how to study in ways that actually work for my brain," Marcus explained. He told David about meeting Samuel and discovering the possibility that he might have dyslexia. David was fascinated. "I had no idea there were so many different ways to learn. No wonder traditional methods were not working for you." The biggest test of Marcus's new strategies came when he had to prepare for his business ethics exam, the test that could determine whether he would pass or fail the class. Instead of panicking, Marcus approached the studying systematically using all the techniques he had learned. He created detailed mind maps for each chapter, used the text-to-speech software to review key concepts, and attended extra study group sessions. Most importantly, he recorded himself explaining the main ideas and listened back to the recordings several times. 3 days before the exam, Marcus ran into Samuel in the library. It was almost midnight again, but this time Marcus was not sitting, alone, looking defeated. Instead, he was working with 2 other students from his study group, using whiteboards to create visual diagrams of ethical theories. "Marcus," Samuel said with a big smile, "you look like a different person. How have the new study methods been working?" "Samuel, they have changed everything," Marcus said excitedly. "I actually understand the material now. I feel prepared for my test instead of terrified." Samuel listened as Marcus explained all the techniques he had been using and how much more confident he felt about his ability to learn. "I knew those methods would work for you," Samuel said proudly. "How are things going with your father? Have you told him about what you have discovered?" Marcus's expression became more serious. "Not yet. I want to wait until after my test. If I can actually get a good grade, then I will have proof that I am not stupid or lazy. I will have evidence that I just needed different tools." "That is a wise approach," Samuel agreed. "Actions speak louder than words. When your father sees your improved grades, he will understand that you have been working hard all along." Samuel helped Marcus's study group clean up their materials. As they worked, he shared more stories about his grandson James and other students he had watched succeed once they found the right learning strategies. "The most important thing," Samuel told Marcus, "is that you now know how your brain works best. Even if you face challenges in the future, you have tools and techniques that you can use to overcome them." That night, as Marcus prepared for bed, he felt a sense of calm confidence that he had never experienced before a major test. He had studied using methods that matched his learning style, he understood the material thoroughly, and he was ready to show Professor Williams what he was truly capable of achieving. For the first time in his academic career, Marcus was actually looking forward to taking a test. The morning of Marcus's business ethics exam, he woke up without the usual feeling of dread and panic. Instead, he felt nervous but prepared, the kind of nervousness that comes from caring about something important, not from feeling hopeless. Marcus had breakfast and reviewed his colorful mind maps one last time. He listened to his recorded explanations of key concepts while he walked to class. When he arrived at the classroom, he felt more confident than he had ever felt before a test. Professor Williams handed out the exam papers and Marcus placed one of his colored overlays on top of the test. Several students looked at him curiously, but Marcus no longer cared what others thought. He was focused on showing what he had learned. The first question asked students to explain the concept of stakeholder theory and give examples of how a company might balance the interests of different stakeholders. Marcus smiled as he read the question. This was exactly the kind of topic he had studied using his new methods. Instead of panicking about how to structure his answer, Marcus quickly drew a small mind map in the margin of his test paper. He put stakeholder theory in the center and drew branches for different types of stakeholders: shareholders, employees, customers, community, environment. Then he used this visual guide to write a clear, organized answer. As Marcus worked through the test, he realized something amazing was happening. He actually understood the questions and he knew how to answer them. The information he had learned using audio methods and visual organization was accessible to him in a way that traditionally studied material had never been. When Marcus finished the test, he felt proud of his work. He could not be certain what grade he would receive, but he knew he had demonstrated his real understanding of the material. After the exam, Marcus went to the library to work on his pharmaceutical ethics essay. Using the techniques Sarah had taught him in the study group, he turned his recorded explanations into a well-structured written paper. The process felt natural and manageable instead of frustrating and impossible. A week later, Professor Williams handed back the graded exams. Marcus's heart pounded as the professor approached his desk. When Professor Williams placed the paper face down on Marcus's desk, he gave him a small nod and what might have been the beginning of a smile. Marcus waited until the professor had finished distributing all the papers before he turned his exam over. At the top of the page, written in blue ink, was a B+ with 87% next to it. Below that, Professor Williams had written, "Excellent improvement, Marcus. Your answers show real understanding of the concepts. Whatever you have been doing differently, keep it up." Marcus stared at the grade in disbelief. A B+. He had not just passed, he had done well. Really well. After years of failing tests, he had scored an 87% on one of the most important exams of the semester. When class ended, Marcus stayed behind to talk to Professor Williams. "Professor, I wanted to thank you for giving me a chance to improve," Marcus said. "You did the work, Marcus," Professor Williams replied. "I have to say I am impressed by your turnaround." "What changed?" Marcus told him about discovering that he might have dyslexia and learning new study methods that worked better for his brain. Professor Williams listened with genuine interest. "I am glad you found strategies that work for you," the professor said. "Have you considered getting officially tested for learning disabilities? The university can provide accommodations that might help you in other classes as well." "I have an appointment for testing next week," Marcus said. "Good. And Marcus, you should know that your essay on pharmaceutical ethics was one of the best in the class. You clearly have a strong understanding of complex ethical issues. I think you have a bright future in business if you continue using effective study methods." Marcus left the classroom feeling like he was walking on air. He immediately called Samuel, who was working in another building on campus. "Samuel, I got a B+ on my business ethics exam," Marcus said excitedly. "That is wonderful news," Samuel replied. "I knew you could do it. How does it feel to succeed using study methods that work for your brain?" "It feels incredible," Marcus said. "For the first time in my life, I feel like I am actually smart." "You were always smart," Samuel reminded him. "Now you have proof." That evening, Marcus called his father. He had been dreading this conversation for weeks, but now he felt ready. "Dad, I got my business ethics test back today," Marcus said. "And?" his father replied, his voice tense. "I got a B+, 87%. There was silence on the other end of the phone. Finally, his father spoke. "A B+, are you certain?" "Yes, Dad. And my professor said my essay was one of the best in the class." "Marcus, that is excellent news. What happened? How did you manage to improve so dramatically?" Marcus explained about meeting Samuel, learning about dyslexia, and discovering study methods that worked for his type of brain. His father listened without interrupting. "So you are telling me that all this time, you were not lazy or unmotivated. You just needed different learning strategies?" His father asked. "That is right, Dad. I have been working hard all along, but I was using methods that did not match how my brain processes information." Marcus's father was quiet for a long moment. "Son, I owe you an apology. I thought you were not applying yourself. I never considered that you might learn differently than I do." "It is okay, Dad. I did not understand it either until Samuel helped me figure it out. I want to meet this janitor, his father said. Anyone who could help my son this much deserves my thanks. Over the following weeks, Marcus's improvement continued. He aced his next economics exam using similar study strategies. His confidence grew with each success, and he began to see himself as a capable student for the first time in his life. Marcus was officially tested and diagnosed with dyslexia. The Learning Disabilities Center provided him with accommodations, including extended time on tests and the ability to take exams in a quiet room. These accommodations made a significant difference in his performance. More importantly, Marcus had become an advocate for other students with learning differences. He volunteered to speak at orientation sessions for new students, sharing his story and encouraging others to seek help if they were struggling academically. Marcus also maintained his friendship with Samuel. Every few weeks, they would meet in the library late at night to talk about Marcus's progress and life in general. Samuel became not just a mentor but a trusted friend who had helped Marcus discover his true potential. "You know," Samuel said during one of their conversations, "helping you has been one of the most rewarding experiences of my 30 years working here. There is nothing better than watching a young person realize how capable they really are." "Samuel, you saved my academic career and probably my relationship with my father," Marcus replied. "I will never be able to thank you enough." "Just promise me you will help other students who are struggling the way you were," Samuel said. "Pass on what you have learned," Marcus promised, and he meant it. He had learned that intelligence comes in many forms, and that everyone deserves the chance to succeed using methods that work for their unique brain. His transformation from failing student to academic success had taught him lessons that would last a lifetime. By the end of the semester, Marcus had achieved something he had never thought possible. He made the dean's list. His grades included 2 A's, 2 B pluses, and 1 B. For a student who had been failing just months earlier, this was nothing short of miraculous. The transformation was not just in his grades. Marcus carried himself differently now. He walked across campus with confidence, participated actively in class discussions, and had become a leader in the alternative learning study group. Other students began coming to him for advice about study strategies and learning difficulties. 3 days before graduation, Marcus's father arrived on campus. Marcus Rothwell Jr. had planned this visit expecting to have a difficult conversation about his son's academic failures and future. Instead, he found himself being led on a tour by a confident young man who was eager to show off his achievements. "Dad, I want you to meet some important people," Marcus said as they walked across the campus quad. Their first stop was the Learning Disabilities Center, where Mrs. Chen greeted Marcus warmly. "Your son has become one of our success stories," she told Marcus's father. "He not only overcame his own challenges but has helped many other students discover effective learning strategies." Marcus showed his father the study room where his learning group met. The walls were covered with colorful mind maps, visual learning aids, and encouraging messages from students who had found success using alternative methods. "This room has changed my life," Marcus explained to his father. "I learned that being smart does not mean being able to learn the same way everyone else does. It means finding the methods that work for your particular brain." Next, Marcus took his father to meet Professor Williams, who was packing up his office for the summer break. "Mr. Rothwell," Professor Williams said, shaking hands with Marcus's father, "you should be very proud of your son. Not only did he turn his own academic performance around, but he has become a mentor to other struggling students. His essay on corporate social responsibility was published in our department's academic journal." Marcus's father looked amazed. "Published? In an academic journal?" "Yes," Professor Williams continued. "Marcus has a natural talent for understanding complex ethical issues and explaining them clearly. I believe he has a bright future in business, especially in areas that require strong analytical thinking and ethical reasoning." As they left the professor's office, Marcus's father put his hand on his son's shoulder. "Marcus, I am impressed by what you have accomplished, but I am even more impressed by how you have helped other students. That shows real character." "I learned that from Samuel," Marcus said. He taught me that true success means lifting others up, not just achieving your own goals. I want to meet this Samuel, his father said. He sounds like an extraordinary person. That evening, Marcus arranged to meet Samuel in the library. It was the same place where they had first met, but everything felt different now. Marcus was no longer a struggling, desperate student. He was a confident graduate about to begin an exciting future. Samuel arrived wearing his usual custodial uniform, pushing his cleaning cart. Marcus's father, dressed in an expensive business suit, stood up as Samuel approached. "Samuel Washington," Samuel said, extending his hand with a warm smile. "Marcus Rothwell, Jr." Marcus's father replied, shaking Samuel's hand firmly. "I cannot thank you enough for what you have done for my son." The three men sat down at the same table where Marcus and Samuel had first worked together months earlier. Samuel listened as Marcus and his father talked about the dramatic changes in Marcus's academic performance and personal confidence. "Samuel," Marcus's father said, "my son tells me that you were the first person to recognize that he might have dyslexia and to show him alternative learning methods. As a businessman, I recognize talent when I see it. You have skills that could be valuable in many different settings." Samuel smiled but shook his head gently. "Thank you for the kind words, Mr. Rothwell, but I am happy doing what I do. I have been working at this university for 30 years and I plan to retire here. Helping students like Marcus is part of why I love my job." Marcus's father looked thoughtful. "What if there was a way to help more students like Marcus? What if we could create a program that would teach these learning strategies to students across the country?" "What do you mean?" Samuel asked. "I mean, a foundation," Marcus's father said, his business mind starting to work. "A foundation dedicated to helping students with learning differences. We could fund research, create educational materials, train teachers and tutors in alternative learning methods." Marcus felt excitement growing in his chest. "Dad, that is an amazing idea. Think about how many students are struggling right now the way I was, thinking they are stupid when they just need different tools." Samuel looked intrigued. "A foundation like that could make a real difference. Too many bright students give up on education because they cannot succeed with traditional methods." "I want to fund this foundation," Marcus's father said. "And I want both of you to help me design it. Samuel, you have 30 years of experience observing students and understanding what works. Marcus, you have lived through the transformation from failure to success. Together we could create something that changes lives." Over the following months, the Rothwell Foundation for Learning Differences became a reality. Marcus's father donated $5 million to start the foundation, which focused on 3 main areas: research into learning differences, training for educators, and direct support for students who needed alternative learning strategies. Samuel agreed to serve as a consultant to the foundation, sharing his insights about how different students learn best. His decades of quiet observation and wisdom became the foundation for training programs that helped teachers recognize students who might benefit from alternative approaches. Marcus took a gap year before starting his career to work full-time for the foundation. He traveled to universities across the country, speaking to students about learning differences and helping to establish support programs similar to the one that had helped him at Westfield. "The most important thing I want students to understand," Marcus would tell audiences, "is that having a learning difference does not make you less intelligent. It makes you different, and different can be incredibly valuable." The foundation also created scholarships for students with diagnosed learning differences, ensuring that financial barriers would not prevent them from getting the support they needed to succeed in college. 1 year after graduation, Marcus returned to Westfield University for a special event. The university was dedicating its new Learning Differences Resource Center, which had been funded by the Rothwell Foundation. The center featured state-of-the-art assistive technology, comfortable study spaces designed for different learning styles, and a full-time staff trained in alternative teaching methods. Samuel was invited to speak at the dedication ceremony. Standing at the podium in front of hundreds of students, faculty, and donors, the man who had spent 30 years quietly cleaning floors and observing students finally had a chance to share his wisdom with a large audience. In my 30 years at this university, Samuel said, I have learned that intelligence comes in many forms. Some students learn best by reading, others by listening, others by moving around while they think. The key is not to force every student into the same mold, but to help each student discover how their unique brain works best. Samuel looked out at the audience and found Marcus and his father sitting in the front row. I have also learned that sometimes the most important conversations happen in unexpected places, at unexpected times, between people who might seem to have nothing in common. You never know when you might meet someone who will change your life, or when you might be the person who changes someone else's life. After the ceremony, Marcus approached Samuel with a special gift, a framed photograph of the library table where they had first met, along with a plaque that read, "Where wisdom meets opportunity, miracles happen." "Samuel," Marcus said, "you taught me that my brain is not broken. It just works differently. But more than that, you taught me the importance of helping others discover their own potential." Samuel smiled and looked at the photograph. "Marcus, you have taken what you learned and used it to help thousands of other students. That is the real success story." Marcus had indeed found success, but not in the way his father had originally imagined. Yes, Marcus would eventually join the family business and prove himself as a capable leader, but his true legacy would be the foundation that helped countless students discover that intelligence comes in many forms, and that everyone deserves the chance to learn in ways that work for their unique mind. The boy who had once thought he was stupid had become a man who understood that true intelligence is not about conforming to a single standard, but about finding your own path to success and then helping others find theirs. And it all started with a conversation between a struggling student and a wise janitor in a quiet library late one night. Proof that wisdom and opportunity can meet anywhere, and that the most unlikely friendships can change the world.